This poor thing was trashed before it even had a chance. So I'm going to tell you a story behind this and another thing, but first I just want to bring you guys up to speed on other stuff that's going on. Did the alignment on bottle rocket this morning, so now when we do the alignment with the front end up, raised, because that's, you know, drag racing, right? Front end comes up a little bit, so you don't want to do the alignment at level. You want to put a jack under it and get your alignment there. So that's done. Car tracks great, drives great. She's ready to go. Couple of things. So on the last video that we took a squirt with this thing out front, I was going through some of the comments. Some of them were actually funny. One of them was like, "You should be lucky if that car runs a 16. That's a 16-sided car." Right? There were a bunch of comments like that. I'm like, just for the record, the car, in between all of its various breakages, spitting axles out and collapsing clutch linkages and doing all kinds of other things, it's been cursed. The car's been cursed. I know. But in between, it has run 880s, which is in the 8th mile, which is nothing to brag about, but that is like a mid-13-second quarter mile, if you do a conversion on it. And that was with a clutch slipping the entire way and me letting out about 20 or 30 feet before the finish line because the clutch had just completely run away at that point. So that's the car's best ET so far. The best 60-foot was a 172, and that was without nitrous. So the car's actually already got incremental numbers that show that the way it sits without nitrous, it's a lot faster than you think that it is. But that's, speculation means nothing. I know. It's all on the time slip. I get it. I know. But just, the car's already gone much faster than that. All right. There were some other comments too. There was like a couple of them like, "You could hear it breaking up." I said, no, you never heard it breaking up. What it does, and on deceleration, there's got a little bit of a flange leak over here. So on deceleration, it sucks in some air and it'll backfire through the exhaust as it's slowing down. No, you never heard a misfire out of this engine. You'll never hear a misfire. I defy anybody to show any video where any engine I put together or set up misfires, even once, because it don't happen in my world. And then there was somebody else who was like, "Well, you could hear the motor like kind of like lay down." Well, actually, no, it didn't lay down. What happened was after I shifted into first, I let go of the nitrous button and then I clicked it again. And if you watch the video, you can see my finger moving on the button. So that's what that was. It was pulling through first. I hit second. When it hit second, I let off and I hit it again. Why? I don't know. It's just something I did, but that's what that was. The motor didn't lay down. It was just me playing with the button. So yesterday, and there's another thing too. I'm gathering parts for a mule, right? I told you we're going to build a mule car. Going to take one of the cars we got at the house, going to do a mule. So this one's getting a motor plate. This is the engine we're going to use to set up in. And we're going to do this with a big block. And the reason we're doing this with big blocks, and I've got a couple I'm going to put together. The reason we're doing this with big blocks is because the way these things are set up, the intake manifolds can be swapped out without disturbing any water passages or anything like that. The distributor is right up front. It doesn't have to be disturbed to change intake manifolds or do anything like that. These engines are extremely easy to work on, especially when they're wide open in a wide open environment. So we're setting this car up with motor plates so that if we do want to pull a motor and swap a different motor into it, it's literally like a 10-minute job. So we're moving ahead with this. But this is we're just mocking stuff together right now and gathering all the bits and pieces so that when we roll the car over here, it's just click, 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 just slam it all together. The reason why you came to this video. Okay. So here's two synchronicities, or one synchronicity that happened yesterday. Okay. So Kiwi's classic custom, the guy with the funny accent. He asked me the other day, he says, "Hey, I got this 318 sitting around my shop. Do you want it?" I says, "Sure, why not?" He says, "All right, I'll drop it off to you." So the story with this thing is he pulled it out of a customer's car several years ago, and it's been sitting in his shop collecting bodywork dust and just being in the way for the last several years. He had no idea what was inside the engine or what the history of the engine was. All he knew was that the customer wanted it out and they wanted to put a 340 in. So that's what he did. And then it sat. So he says, I don't know what's inside the motor. He says, I think it has a cam, you know, and he drops the thing off. So yesterday, I tear it apart, and I says, oh my God, this is a new motor. So if you look at, okay, this is what the eye sees when you first, you know, it looks like it's ancient. It's got a ton of miles on it, or it's just, you know, but this thing is actually machine shop fresh. If you look at the surfaces that haven't been covered with bodywork dust, it's machine shop fresh. Here's a conditioner, your connecting rods and everything. It's got brand new KB, the hyper-eutectic pistons in it. Everything was new, everything was fresh. Why didn't the guy want this motor? Because it was trashed. It was trashed before it ever actually had a chance to run. Now when you talk about synchronicity, yesterday I'm taking this thing apart. I'm here taking this thing apart, and I pop the piston out. I'm looking at everything. I says, I got to make a video about this, about how an engine can get wasted during the break-in period. So synchronicity. Last night I see a video that Chris Birdsong put out. So Chris has no idea who I am, I don't think, but he definitely knows Uncle Kathy. The two of them got into a vicious internet pissing match over the fate of a Slant 6 68 Charger at some point, probably about 10 years ago. But anyway, Chris Birdsong puts out a video yesterday, and he's going through a laundry list of aftermarket parts that have failed him. And it's just one thing after another, brake problems, alternator problems, blah, 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 blah. And then at some point during the video, he says, and I'm done with EFI. I'm going back to carburetors. I never should have left. And he goes on to explain that he built this brand new big block, everything fresh inside of it. He puts this engine together, and he puts, I won't say the brand, EFI, right? A self-learning EFI system on it. So he puts a self-learning EFI system on this engine. And he notices that it's running fat during, you know, the self-learning or the break-in procedure. He uses the car, he puts a couple of thousand miles on it, and then he sees that it's using oil. It's got oil on the back face of the intake valves. It's just the motor's a pig. It doesn't really make any power, and it uses oil. And he doesn't know why. So finally he tears it apart, and he finds that the cylinder walls are glazed. What happened was, during that break-in period with that self-learning EFI, the computer on the EFI kept feeding this thing fuel. It kept fattening it up, because I imagine the things that it was picking up through the exhauster in the break-in period caused it to go full fat, and it trashed the motor during the break-in period. Once you get past that break-in period, where the rings and the cylinder walls meet, everybody thinks about the camshaft, that mating period between the cam and the lifters, with a flat top of cam, is like the big thing with break-ins. But no, that's only part of it. Even with a roller cam engine, the rings seating to the cylinder walls is super important. And when you run a super fat mixture and you dilute the oil with gasoline, they don't seat. What it does is it glazes the cylinder walls. And now, instead of it being a seal, because it's glazed, the ring rides over a film of oil. And because it's riding over a film of oil, the crosshatch is there to keep the oil, I explain to you, the oil stays within the crosshatch. It's like a microscopic film of oil. It stays within the crosshatch and keeps everything lubricated. But when it's glazed, when the cylinder wall glazes, it becomes shiny like that. Now that film of oil stays on top of the crosshatch. You can even still see a crosshatch, but if it's not deep enough, the oil film, the ring just rides over the oil film, and that oil ends up in the combustion chamber. And then of course there's also blow-by when you're dealing with this. So at any rate, the moral of his story was he's done with fuel injection. Actually, he said that the motor came up, he completely gave up on it after the ECM took a dump on him out someplace, and he was like, okay, done. So he went back to carburetors, and you guys, go watch that video he put out, and you guys will eventually figure out why I'm so insistent on working with as many OEM and modified OEM parts as possible. So back to this thing here. As you can see, look at the condition of the connecting rods. The bottom of the pistons, you can see that there's no mileage on this thing, right? But because there was so much oil dilution, you can see the scuffing on the skirts, okay? You can see there's scuffing on the cylinder walls. You've got you've got different sections of glaze and scuff and polish and crosshatch, because this engine only ran for a very short period of time before they pulled it out of service. It was probably using oil. The oil that came out of it it's now this oil's been sitting for years, but you could still smell the gas in it. The bearings. Now remember, when you dilute oil with gasoline, when you run it full fat like that, the bearings, these are brand new. And look at the scuffing. Okay, now they're probably okay to reuse. You could probably Scotch-Brite them, and I'll do that. I'll Scotch-Brite them and I'll reassemble them and I'll check the clearance, and if they're good to go, I'll reuse them. But that's not the point. These are all brand new parts. That scuffing is because of oil dilution during that break-in period. Well, actually, at any period. Oil dilution will do this at any period. But the fact that the rings never seated themselves, and that's it. It's done. It's done. It needs to be rebuilt now. The pistons can be reused, but it's going to need new rings. It's going to be rehoned, and then we can put it back together and give it a nice, good cleanup. I don't know what I'm going to do with this engine yet, but actually it came with a few neat parts. It's got a Lunati cam. Oh, there's a spec on it. It's like a 270-degree cam. It's 500 lift on a 110. So it's probably just at right about the outer limits of what the 318 heads can support. But it's got fresh valve springs that went with the cam and all of that. And actually the cam looks good. It looks like it has a good break-in pattern, which is ironic because everything else is got scuff. And then the cam actually looks pretty good. So I think we'll be able to use that. So that's it. The important thing, you're putting a fresh motor together, having a functional induction system that's not running super fast. Super lean will do it too. If it's too lean, cylinder temperatures go way high and that causes problems. If it's too rich, you've got dilution, and during that period of time when all of these parts need to meet together, no good. No good. Gasoline is not the lubricant an engine needs for its break-in period. So in addition to using all of the right procedures and making sure that all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, you want to make sure that the systems around it, the ignition system and the fuel system, are functionally correct before you try to break in an engine. Because that's it. The first 20 minutes, first hour or so that this thing is actually up and running, that sets the tone for the rest of its life. If it's wrong then, it'll never be right. So until you make it right, and that's what we're going to do with this. And I got that other 318 there too. I got 318s coming just all over the place. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one exactly, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do with that one. And it includes that on the 318. More to come later. I'll see you tomorrow.